Dr. Phillips, could I ask you to allow me to share my screen? Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right, folks, good evening. It is 7 o'clock here on the beautiful Central Coast. So we're going to call the meeting of the Santa Barbara County Citizens Independent Redistricting Committee for May 12th to order. Welcome those who are attending from the public with us this evening, and welcome also to our fellow commissioners and our staff support team. Our primary purpose for our meeting this evening is to conduct at least part of the interviews of potential candidates for appointment to fill a vacant seat on the commission. Just for everyone's clarity, we will not be making that appointment decision this evening, as there are 2 interviews that had to be scheduled at the beginning of our meeting 1 week from tonight. So we will conduct a few interviews, and that will be then we will adjourn until next week when we'll complete that process. But let's get started here. And Ms. Tilton, can I ask you to get us started with a roll call, please?
Yes, First District Commissioner Trotsky.
Present.
First District Commissioner Twibell.
Present.
Second District Commissioner McClintock.
He's here. I can see him.
He's here, yes. Second District Vice Chair Turley.
Present.
Third District Commissioner Bradley.
Present.
Third District Commissioner Olmedo.
Present.
Fourth District Commissioner Bray.
Present.
Fourth District Commissioner Ochoa.
Present.
Fifth District Commissioner Rios.
Present.
And Fifth District Chair Morris.
Present.
All seated commissioners are present.
Fantastic. Thank you. Kind of caught you by a little off guard there, didn't we, Ben? That third district thing. All right. So before we go to public comment, let me just remind those who are viewing in the public of agenda items 2 and 3, which are reminders of where you can find ex parte communication disclosures from commissioners, as well as a form to submit recommended community organizations that the commission should connect with as part of our public outreach efforts, which will begin in the next several weeks. So if you have recommendations and or represent an organization that would like the commission to engage with your organization, please use the form listed on the website and mentioned on the agenda to begin that connection. Let's start with some public comment this evening. And Ms. Tilton, do you want to explain how that works and walk us through the process?
Yes, today's meeting is remote virtual only through the Zoom webinar information identified on the public agenda. The meeting is being recorded and will be available for viewing on the internet at www.countyofsb.org/redistricting.sbc. Public participation during the meeting can only be done through the Zoom webinar link or by calling the phone number provided on the agenda. For those using the Zoom webinar link, please indicate that you wish to speak during public comment by selecting the raise your hand feature. Attendees by phone can raise your hand by pressing *9. When called upon, please state your name for the record. We reserve the right to mute a microphone for profane, harassing, or offensive language, or for speaking beyond the time limit set. The time limit for public comment is set at 3 minutes. Recordings of the commission meetings, agendas, supplemental materials, and minutes of the commission are available on the internet at the same redistricting webpage cited earlier at www.countyofsb.org/redistricting.sbc.
And do we have folks that are ready to share advice or input with us?
So I see 4 hands raised. The first is from Lawanda Lyons Pruitt.
Good evening, Ms. Lyons Pruitt. How are you this evening?
Good evening, Chair Morris, Commissioners. LaWanda Lyons Pruitt, representing the Santa Maria Lompoc branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. You know us as NAACP, NAACP. We know that consideration is being given to Latinx and people of color and their representation on the commission, which shouldn't be the case, as the language in the audience make it clear. And that's number 4, I believe is H3. In addition to the commission reflecting the county's diversity, including racial, ethnic, geographic, age, and gender diversity, also spells out political party preference of the commission being considered, although it doesn't have to be proportional. So with only about 15% of Latinx voters in the county being registered as Republicans, it seems to us that appointing a person of Latinx descent who is a Republican would hardly function as a true representation of the Latinx community. We believe that the pool of candidates, probably through no fault of your own, I do believe that you are trying, but it is frustratingly white and older. However, I still feel that people of color do not simply want someone to represent them based on racial status. As of all people of color and even Latinx people view the world the same, and we speak adequately on behalf of others for their demographic group. People of color are diverse, and like white people, they hold views and have values and want to see those reflected in the makeup of the commission. So appointing someone who is Republican and Latinx to replace a Democrat would not truly reflect the views of the overwhelmingly majority of people of color, or he's a registered Democrat or no party preference. So we ask you to take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
The next speaker is Lindsay Baker.
Good evening, Ms. Baker. Do we have, there you are.
Good evening, Chair Morris and Commissioners. I am speaking for the League of Women Voters of Santa Barbara. The League was a sponsor of Measure G. One of the requirements of Measure G is that the commission should reflect the political preferences of the county's registered voters. Is this process transparent, and will this get this outcome? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
The next speaker is Gerardo Gonzalez.
Good evening, Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Gonzalez, I think you're on mute, sir.
Bueno,
Good evening.
bueno. Me llamo Gerardo González, soy de Guadalupe. Hoy hablo porque yo creo que Lupe Alvarez es la opción clara para este puesto, y al seleccionar como reemplazo de la comisión Hutli, satisfaría no solamente la ordenanza actual en la que la comisión debe actuar, pero también lo que los votantes del condado de Santa Bárbara aprobaron. Eso sería todo. Otra vez, mi nombre es Gerardo, soy de Guadalupe, y ojalá que escojan a Lupe Alvarez. Gracias.
And Chair Morris, we can bring our interpreter over to the English side so that he can give a summary of Mr. Gonzalez's comments.
Thank you.
Dr. Phillips, I think you'll need to bring our interpreter over.
This is Doug. We're discovering one of the tricks of Zoom is the interpreter is in the English channel, but if you're in the default off channel, you can't hear him. So if the interpreter can switch to the off channel, that might work. I think that'll apply to all of them. Sorry, Carlos. Yeah, Carlos, can you switch to the off channel, or is that not available for you? Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, so the way, just like Carlos, so the way the interpreter works, he only has the English or the Spanish. So you can give us a second. If you go down to the bottom of your screen where there's a chat and the participants, there's a globe with interpretation. So everyone just needs to choose English there. And so, and then Carlos.
Yes, the link we've got you now, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure. Hey, before you go over, Mr. Gonzalez is still on our screen, so I believe if you want to just speak to him directly, he should be able to hear you right now. Very good.
He's muted, so maybe, señor González está mutado. No sé si escuchó el mensaje del interpretador. So I asked Mr. Gonzalez to unmute himself. I'm not sure if he knows he's unmuted because the interpreter was speaking to him.
Actually, Commissioner Rios, he may be having the same problem we had. Can you switch to the off channel and say that in Spanish to him, please? Or,
Señor González está presente. Queríamos ver si podía volver a repetir su mensaje para que puedan traducirlo en inglés. No sé si me escucha. Si me escucha, puede hacer quitar o activar el sonido en su aparato.
And actually, he's gone from the list of panelists and attendees.
Yeah, I
So I
don't
think
see
he
him
hung up.
anymore.
Okay, well, at least we were able to get the general idea. So if he does call back in at some point, we can try it at that point. So Ms. Tilton, who's next?
The next speaker is Joe Pierre.
Good evening, Mr. Pierre.
Good evening, Chair Morris and Commissioners. My name is Joe Pierre, and I am the North County Vice Chair of the Santa Barbara County Democratic Central Committee. Our Central Committee has refrained from taking an active role in this process, respecting the spirit of the voter-approved Measure G, which created this commission as an independent body for the purpose of reducing the influence of incumbent elected officials, special interests, and political parties. It is our position that the independent redistricting is the best way to keep from political districts being manipulated by incumbents. Political partisanship proportionally is the cornerstone of redistricting commissions, not just in our county, but across the state and across the United States. That's our county's political party registration makeup, which comprises of 47% registered Democrats, 25% registered Republicans, and 28% no party preference. A proportional commission would therefore include 5 registered Democrats. However, there are only currently 3. Meanwhile, Republicans enjoy overrepresentation on the commission with 3 commissioners. Now the Republican Party is trying to attempt to further undermine independent redistricting process by demanding a 4th Republican commissioner be appointed under the guise of advocating for Hispanic or Latino representation. When county election officials selected the 45 applicants for this commission, he did so without regard of race, gender, age, or ethnic background. This action limited the pool to so much that only 13% of the applicants identified as Hispanic or Latino made the cut. Only one of those is a registered Democrat. Official statistics from a state-maintained statewide database show that the vast majority of Hispanic or Latino identified voters in our county, 86%, are either registered Democrats or unaffiliated. Less than 15% are Republicans. The Republican Party is not concerned with diversity on this commission. They are concerned with advocating for their preferred applicant in another attempt to blatantly politicize the process and stack the deck in their favor. We recognize that the commission cannot stop the Republican Party or their conservative allies from attempting to subvert this process, but you can preserve the integrity of the commission and the respect of the residents by adhering to the law established by the redistricting ordinance itself and not submit to blatant partisan efforts to manipulate the composition of the commission. And we respectfully request that you appoint a Democrat to fill the current vacancy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The next speaker is Andy Caldwell, and that's the last hand that I see raised.
Good. Evening, Mr. Caldwell. Andy, I think you're still muted. There we go.
Yeah, the screen just changed on us. That was something that, anyway, thank you. I'm Andy Caldwell representing CoLab, and I want to remind you, first of all, CoLab is bipartisan. We've got Democrats, independents, and Republicans on our board. We don't endorse candidates. We don't give money to candidates, and we serve as a government watchdog. And I just want to remind you that what the ordinance says is that formulas or ratios shall not be applied for picking appointees, and that it's supposed to be as proportional as possible. And, you know, the bottom line here is the Democratic Party is trying to tell you they've not been involved with this, but you'll have to remember the full court press that Phil Seymour, Spencer Brandt, and others placed on the choice of your counsel. And now, lo and behold, Phil Seymour is writing a letter as representing the Santa Barbara Democratic Party. And of course, Spencer Brandt works for the Democratic Party. So for them to pretend they've had their political hands off this thing is ridiculous. What we've just wanted you to do is follow the ordinance. And we feel that if the 3rd District representative resigned, then you should look to the pool of 3rd District representatives and not disqualify a bona fide, qualified Latino simply because he has an R next to his name. Rejecting somebody because of political party affiliation is the very definition of politicizing this commission. I frankly don't care what party somebody belongs to. I want them to be impartial, fair, and go with the rules. So I was very happy last time when Vice Chair Turley said, well, we should interview them all and pick the best person, versus saying, no, we're going with a white Dem who most likely will be a male. Because that is sexist. That is partisanship. It's the very definition of partisanship. And we've run in this before. When Abel Maldonado was running, people said he couldn't represent Latinos because he was a Republican, even though he was a son of a bracero. We've seen this many times. Joe Centeno as well, who grew up in an incredibly impoverished family, was opposed by a group calling themselves Latino voting activists. We think that the race thing should not be, nobody should be picked on race. Nobody should be disqualified because of party. And again, we ask that you would consider the fact that this was a 3rd District vacancy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Ms. Tilton, did we have any written?
We have 2 more hands raised. We have
Oh.
Philip Seymour and then Lee.
Okay, we'll take these 2 and then we'll move on from there. Mr. Seymour, good evening. Good evening, Mr. Seymour.
Hi, I'm having something with my internet here, so I hope that does cut out. Thank you. Thank all the commissioners for staying on those of you who have made it, because this whole process has become a little less pleasant than what probably we hoped it would be. At the end of the day, your job to implement the will of the people is reflected in the ordinance. I sent you a long letter on behalf of the Democratic Central Committee. I think that analysis is accurate. As far as the comment you just heard from Mr. Caldwell, no, he's wrong. As far as demographic considerations, age, gender, nationality, ethnic considerations, there's an actual prohibition on having quotas. However, with respect to partisan affiliation, the ordinance is very clear that there has to be a balance, rough proportionality. And so, regardless of the considerations, that's one that's going to have to take primacy in making your choice. I think you have some excellent candidates there. It shouldn't be a difficult choice. But we all know that ultimately the comments that have been made on the other side are about getting a Republican on the commission, and that's not a way to go. It's not fair. It's ethical, and it's not legal in this particular circumstance. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The next speaker is Lee.
Good evening, Lee. If you can unmute and make your comments.
Now,
There you
can you
are.
hear me?
We can now, yes, sir.
Okay, good. Thank you. First of all, thank you for taking the time to listen to us people out in the hustings. Two-part comment. First of all, Mr. Caldwell speaks of a nonpartisanship in CoLab, but if you read his tidal wave of emails, they have slid inexorably to the right to the point where it's absurd for him to take that position. The second comment or question I have is why the discussion has slid into politics. And I do understand the impact of politics on the redistricting. I believe it's an unfortunate concomitant of this process. But my understanding was that the composition of the commission would be in effect best defined as nonpartisan. One of the last thoughts I'd like to communicate is that the previous redistricting that included Isla Vista in the 3rd district struck me and strikes me as absurd. There is nothing in Isla Vista, particularly UCSB, that gives them a familiarity or any conjunction with the interests of the 3rd district, which is essentially agrarian and rural. I understand that they vote. I understand that there is a kind of silliness in that, but I just wonder whether the commission has taken that into account. I suspect you've had a lot of commentary about that. Thank you for the privilege of speaking with you, and I hope things go a little better than they have.
Thank you, sir.
And I have no more hands raised. I do have some public comment that was submitted. Would like me to read that now?
Yes, please.
We had written comment submitted by Philip Seymour, representing the Santa Barbara County Democratic Central Committee regarding the ordinance and its requirement that a Democrat be chosen to fill the vacancy. The correspondence from Kimmis Brady regarding the Santa Ynez Valley, North County, and requesting that it be drawn in its own rural district. We had a correspondence from Kathy Grace Velasquez, hoping that District 3 boundaries are changed. We have correspondence from Andy Caldwell, transmitting a copy of Robert Mercado's op-ed regarding commission appointments and race. And then we had a comment submitted by Robin Saraslev, hoping District 3 boundaries are changed. And that is all.
Very well, thank you. We'll close public comment now and move to item 5 on our agenda, which is the interviews of our applicants for the open seat on the commission. Our first interview this evening, and let me just, before we bring the candidate, for the benefit of the public, let me just explain the process. We will follow the same process we have with all other commission appointment selections. There will be 5 questions asked. These are the same questions we have used from the beginning. Each applicant will be given roughly 3 minutes per question to respond to the question, and that will complete the interview at the end of that 15 minutes. I would also note, just as a process comment, that Mr. Elak, who was interviewed previously, is a considered candidate for appointment this time. He will not, however, be live interviewed again, but the commissioners have had the opportunity to go back and review the video footage of his initial interview. Again, that is consistent with what we have done in previous rounds. And I would also point out again that there are 2 candidates who will be interviewed at the beginning of our meeting 1 week from this evening. So we will not be making a final determination or appointment this evening, but we'll simply conduct these interviews and then adjourn until next week. With that, our first candidate is Mr. Gerald Dewitt. If we could invite him to join us as a live panelist. Good evening, Mr. DeWitt. If you could unmute, and if you could take just a moment and briefly introduce yourself to the commission, and then we'll begin with the formal questions for this evening. You're still muted, sir. If you could.
Did that do it?
That did it.
All right. Good evening. My name's Gerald Dewitt. By way of introduction, I came to Santa Barbara, came to the area in 1970 to attend UCSB. So it's been over half a century now that I've been here. Graduated from UCSB in 1974 with degrees in economics and sociology. Proceeded to work on the impacts of growth, a study for the city of Santa Barbara that, among other things, looked very closely at neighborhood impacts, which required very much looking at what we define as communities of interest. I did go on to serve on the Santa Barbara City Planning Commission and for 12 years on the Santa Barbara City Council. So I am now retired. I also worked for the county for 12 years out at public health. Am now retired, have the time. I'm very interested in this process. I very much supported making this process independent, not having the politicians drawing their own districts. I think that's very important and would like very much to be a part of it.
Well, thank you. We'll begin with our questions. Mr. Commissioner Bray has the first question this evening.
Thank you, Chair Morris, and good evening, Mr. DeWitt. Very first question to lead off is, why do you want to serve on this redistricting commission?
Well, as I said, it's something I've been very interested in. I know how important the drawing of districts is as far as people being represented and having adequate representation on the board. And the board does so much as far as distributing resources. It's a process I've been very interested in. As I said, I very much supported making the process independent. I very much understand the concept of communities of interest, that they're to be preserved and not split up. I also very much understand how the process works, have the time, and would very much like to be involved.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Rios has the next question.
Yes, hello, thank you for joining us this evening. My question for you is, given the commission seated members and what you know about their backgrounds and skill sets, could you highlight elements of your personal background and skills and knowledge of Santa Barbara County that you think will add to the overall diversity of the commission?
Obviously, as a 69-year-old white man, my very presence is not going to add much in the way of what we normally think of as diversity. However, my experience in the community has been extensive. As I say, I was on the Santa Barbara City Council for 12 years, working with a variety of people, a variety of communities. This was at a time before the city was divided into districts. So it was a matter of working citywide. Again, I very much understand communities of interest. I know what the commission, what the function is. And in that sense, and I, again, have been very actively supported throughout my political career by various minority communities. So again, I can't help the fact that I'm a 69-year-old white man, but I think as far as the diverse interests of the commission, I think I can represent them well.
Thank you. Commissioner Trusky has our next question.
Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. How would you help the commission draw lines that promote communities of interest?
That's the big question. Obviously, with the new census data, and I think I have a little different view than many of the previous interviewees that I've seen. They're kind of looking at a blank slate to go out into the county and find people with common interests and draw them together. I think we have to look at the fact that what we have to come up with are 5 districts that are geographically contiguous and roughly equivalent as far as population, which is shifting to the north. So there immediately are restrictions as far as looking all over the community for diversity. I think certain communities of interest define themselves. Cities are communities of interest, and that's why they incorporated. And they also have representatives, spokesmen that speak for them. When I was on the city council in the 80s, the 2nd district was essentially the city of Santa Barbara. We worked very closely with Bob Coleman, who was our supervisor. It was a good relationship and it worked well. And in that sense, I think because we have major cities, I think Lompoc and Santa Maria are going to define districts. I think Santa Barbara and Goleta are going to define districts. I agree with the previous speaker that said Isla Vista does not belong blended in with San Ynez. I don't know if the population shifts will allow us to avoid that happening. I don't know if we're going to be able to avoid splitting the city of Santa Barbara. But again, I hope so. But I think the important questions are going to be where those lines are drawn in between. And that's where we need to look for communities of interest, not to split up.
Good. Commissioner Twiebell.
Good evening. Could you describe a project or other experience in which you had to collaborate with a group of individuals in order to reach a common goal? When you disagreed with others, how did you handle those disagreements?
Well, as I said, when I was on the city council in the 80s, it was not nearly the politically monogamous group that it is today. It was a much more diverse group with very, Santa Barbara was at a crossroads as far as growth. We had very divergent points of view and very important decisions that had to be made. And yet we managed to build Paseo Nuevo. We completed the Crosstown Freeway project. We built the desalination plant. We were able to come together and agree on important things that needed to be done. And I think that is the key. Again, what we're going to have here is those key questions of deciding where the lines are. And again, a lot is going to be defined for us, but I think it's going to be very important to go out into that community and find out how communities self-identify and making sure that we don't divide those communities. But again, as far as working together, between my years on the Planning Commission and the City Council, I've had many years of working with other people.
Thank you, sir. Let's see, who had for Commissioner Bradley? There we go.
Good evening, Mr. Dewitt.
Good evening.
Thank you for joining us. How do you think the commission should address the problem of public education and outreach on redistricting to help encourage broad participation in the commission's work? And what are some ideas you have for the commission to solicit public input on the redistricting process and methods of public outreach to ensure transparency?
Obviously, it's a very important process, but it's also a somewhat dry process starting out. Hard to get people real interested at the beginning. And I think the important thing is to point out exactly how important it is to people and get that message out. At the beginning, one question that I would be interested in hearing and putting out through public media, social media, any way we can, is people who don't feel that their supervisor represents them and why that is. And if they feel they would be more at home in another district, or if it's just political differences within the community. But I think that's a very important question to start out with. At the end, I think to get people involved and interested, that they're going to be very interested when they see more specifically what our decisions are. And it's going to come down to where those final lines are drawn. And that's the kind of information to get out. Where does this community, do you identify with the people in this district on this side of you? Do you identify more with people on the other side on that district? And I think the important thing to make sure that we're doing is not splitting up constituencies, not dividing common communities where they have a very common interest and deserve political representation, to divide that to a point where that representation is lost.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your interest in serving and your history of involvement in our community. As we mentioned earlier, we're going to make a final decision on this appointment 1 week from tonight. So we invite you to come back because if you are selected, the intent is to do the swearing in and have you jump right in. So we look forward to seeing you again 1 week from tonight.
I will be on board.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Very well. Our next applicant is, our next interview is with Mr. Lupe Alvarez. If we can invite Mr. Alvarez to join us. Evening, Mr. Alvarez. If you could turn your camera on and unmute.
Okay, give me a second here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We're not seeing you yet.
Yeah, I was on several Zoom meetings today.
Oh, looks like, there we go. We got you back. Are you able to turn on a camera, sir?
I am not, it's not working right. Give me a second still.
There we go.
Okay, all right. Sorry about that.
That's all right. We all live and die by the technology.
Yeah, earlier today, several people couldn't hear me and I had difficulties logging on and logging off several times. So anyway.
We seem to have it. So could you begin by just briefly introducing yourself to the commissioners?
Yes. Good evening. Buenas noches a todos. Mi nombre es Lupe Alvarez. Mis papás son de Jalisco. Yo nací en Santa María y he vivido en Guadalupe casi toda mi vida. Honorable commissioners, my name is Lupe Alvarez. My parents are from Jalisco. I'm first generation. I was born here in Santa Maria. And I love representing my community when I was an elected city council member and mayor. And I'm still very involved in my community. I attend as many city council meetings as I can. I have 2 college-age kids, both went to Cal Poly, and beautiful wife named Olivia that we will be celebrating our 28th anniversary coming up shortly.
Well, commissioners will use the same order. So Commissioner Bray, if you want to lead us off.
Thank you, Chair Morris, and good evening, Mr. Alvarez. Thank you for being with us. First question tonight. Why do you want to serve on the Redistricting Commission?
Well, as most of you know, I had applied previously. I had made the initial 45 member cut, but I applied for one reason and one reason only. The city of Guadalupe is not represented on the commission. We are the only city of the 8 cities that has no representation. I believe it is unfair to the residents of Guadalupe. It is unfair to the process that you are trying to put together right now and redistrict our county equitably in equal amounts or as close to equal amounts of population. I am not an attorney. I would believe, in my own opinion, this is a total disenfranchisement of our residents, but I believe it might almost be a civil rights violation and that we are being ignored as the only city. And the last time I turned in, we had about close to 10% petition that Guadalupe have a seat at the table, and we were not allowed. So if this is about it being inclusive of everybody, then a city of almost 8,000, you're excluding to have a seat at the table. So with that, I also believe it could be a violation of HR 1. But again, I am not an attorney. I have not spoken to an attorney. And I hope that you keep the process as fair as possible. I am of Hispanic. I'm a Mexican American, but I feel that I'm here. My only reason is to represent Guadalupe and no other reason. There is no political reasoning whatsoever.
Hello, Mr. Alvarez. My name is Janet Rios, Commissioner Rios. Thank you for joining us this evening. So my question for you is, given the commission's seated members and what you know about their backgrounds and skill sets, could you highlight elements of your personal background and skills and knowledge of Santa Barbara County that you think will add to the overall diversity of the commission?
Yes, thank you. Well, like I mentioned earlier, I ran for city council. So I was on the city council. I was the mayor for 4 two-year terms. I was also the chairman of SBCAG, the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments. I was also the chair of the Air Pollution Control District. I was also on LAFCO. And I've also been on the board of Marion Hospital for 10 years. And currently I'm on my 3rd year with Community Bank of Santa Maria, and that is a publicly traded company. I'm involved with the church groups. I'm involved with the Historical Society. I'm involved with other nonprofits. that bring inclusivity to our community and want to help population in general of Guadalupe. I believe one's background, one's experience is unique, but when you bring that together as a whole with the commission like this, I think it's really something that benefits everybody if it's a process that's done right. And I don't think I could have been in any of those boards or positions if I was somebody that was fair, equitable, and willing to listen. I think that's a key part. You have to be willing to listen, because if you just want to ram your opinions or ideas, then nothing's going to be happening. You have to be a person with an open mind and not judge others until you've heard all the facts. Hello?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Alvarez.
Good evening.
I'm
Good
going
evening.
to be asking the third question, which is, how would you help the commission draw lines that promote communities of interest?
Well, I think we personally, as individuals, as human beings, we are a community of interest. We need to, again, engage, listen others, listen what their perspectives are, what their experiences are. People have similar backgrounds. You try to listen to their points of views. People that work in different jobs, you try to listen to their points of view. People that have different cultures, you try to listen to their points of view, and you try to balance that with what is fair and equitable for everyone. Is it easy? No, it's a difficult process, and I respect that you are wanting to complete this process for the County of Santa Barbara. It's a tough job that nobody's going to be happy with probably at the end anyway. It's just the truth. Thank you.
Good evening. That's question number 4. Could you describe a project or other experience in which you had to collaborate with a group of individuals in order to reach a common goal? When you disagreed with others, how did you handle those disagreements?
Yes, thank you. So as mayor, we are on different commissions and task forces and whatnot. And we had a lot of accidents on Highway 166 between Santa Maria and Guadalupe, which is also West Main. And there was a task force on safety convened by the local supervisors, by the city of Santa Maria, Caltrans, CHP, SBCAG, multiple stakeholders, probably 20, 25 people at this table. And our main goal was to provide more safety programs, safety goals for the entire 166 corridor, not just west, but also east. Just too many accidents, too many deaths, too many family members being lost. And so we had just lost, a firefighter had just lost her mother from Guadalupe and an accident like 4 or 5 in the morning. And so I suggested that we allow, that we petition Caltrans that we have a safety program with lights on for safety during the day. And everybody was on board. This is already a program that's facilitated and allowed on the east side of 166 towards Bakersfield. But I'm thinking of Guadalupe here, the farm workers that are going to work early in the morning. I'm thinking of the fog. I'm thinking of the mud on the road. And lights on for safety would work on any day of the year, whether it was sunny or if it was foggy or whatnot. Everybody was very supportive, including Caltrans. And the one person that said no, that was not in support of it, was the CHP commander at the time. And I heard his reasoning. He said, we're not going to stop cars just because they don't have their lights on for safety. Yes, it will help, but we're not going to stop them for that. So I heard all his points, all his reasons for why not. And at the end, I asked him, Commander, if you already have the individual stop for maybe a broken taillight, you already have them stop for no seatbelt, you already have them for, maybe a car seat, the child's not in the car seat, you can see them moving around in the back. Now that you have them stop, couldn't you just say that you also did not have your lights on for safety and that it's a safety corridor? And after I said that, before he could even answer, Caltrans said, we believe this is the right thing to do. We believe it's about safety, and we're going to start putting up the signs immediately. And so sometimes even when somebody at the table says no, if you give them reasons why they could agree with you, or everybody else can agree with the suggestion, I think that's an important common factor. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Alvarez. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Good evening.
I'll be giving you question 5. How do you think the commission should address the problem of public education and outreach on redistricting to help encourage broad participation in the commission's work? And what are some ideas that you have for the commission to solicit public input on the redistricting process and methods of public outreach to ensure transparency? Thank you.
Thank you. You know, participation is really, really hard. Here in Guadalupe, where you might actually, I know the answer to this question before I even say it, but on an average city council night, you have one person sitting in the audience. She lives across the street and she's 93 years old. And she is at every single meeting. She's on every single committee. And when I'm maybe 93 someday, if I get to make it, I hope to be that active. But participation is hard. As a person that attends mass or church weekly, I would suggest that we reach out to different churches and have them put it on their website, on their Facebook page, talk about it, you know, in their different activities that they have, so that they can get them interested. Of course, just regular social media, Facebook, you know, Twitter and whatnot. But even at sporting events, if you have somebody maybe passing out some flyers, and when I'm saying sporting events, I mean, I know that we're still at the tail end of COVID here, but there is football games already starting up, baseball games, whatever that's going to be happening. You can pass them out the flyers there, and or put them in their cars. Is it work? Yes, but with this process that is happening right now, this is very important. So any means to get the word out, I think we need to try. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarez. I was just making a note about the sporting events. That's not one I've heard yet. So thank you for that suggestion. Thank you for your interest in serving on the commission and your past service to the community. As you probably heard us say earlier, we're going to make a decision a week from tonight. So we would hope that you'll join us again. Should you be selected, we'd hope that you'd be ready to jump in and get started with us.
Thank you. May I say one more thing real quick? So one thing that I forgot, or I think is very important, is PSAs in Spanish and English on all medias, but Spanish radio, they have the radio, and I don't know, maybe people have suggested this already, but it's just very important because people are still glued to their radios and of course their TVs. So anyway, that's my last comment.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Our third candidate this evening is Michael Hartman. We knew that he had another appointment and was probably going to arrive just before his scheduled time, which is in about 10 or 15 minutes. So we're going to pause for a moment, and Ms. Tilton, as soon as you see that he has arrived in the participants list, would you let us know and we'll come back to order?
Will do. Mm-hmm.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We're going to call the meeting back to order, and we will proceed. Let's make sure we have all the commissioners back. I think we have everybody. Let's see, there we are. And very good. All right. Our third interview this evening is with Mr. Michael Hartman. Good evening, Mr. Hartman. If you could unmute for us, sir, and briefly introduce yourself to the commission. You weren't here earlier, so I'll just explain briefly what will happen. We have 5 questions that members of the commission will pose to you. They're the same questions that all other candidates are getting. We're using the exact same questions with everyone. You'll have about 3 minutes per question to respond, but 15 minutes altogether. Because we have interviews that need to be conducted next week, we will not make a final determination and appointment this evening. But that'll happen toward the beginning of our meeting a week from tonight. So if you could just briefly introduce yourself, and then Commissioner Bray will get us started with the questions. So Mr. Hartman.
Thank you. First of all, I also appreciate the flexibility. We're all super busy, I'm sure. And so I appreciate you kind of reconfiguring the schedule around. So my name is Michael Hartman. I'm 43 years old, live in Santa Maria, California. I'm a teacher. I teach at Aurora Grande High School in San Luis Obispo County. Been a social studies and a PE teacher. I'm the head football coach at Aurora Grande High School. That's where I was. I was at a fundraising meeting. And so I apologize for again being a little tardy. I moved here back in 1999. Met my wife, and we've raised our family here in Santa Maria, and just really excited to have an opportunity to possibly join you and help the democratic process in Santa Barbara County.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman, and good evening. First question of the evening. Why do you want to serve on the commission?
Well, like I said, I've been a social studies teacher, so I've taught both U.S. history, economics, and government. And to me, it's
Mr. Hartman, I don't know if you can hear me. We've lost your audio. If you could, I don't know if there's a way you can we're not getting your audio, sir. I don't know if he can. Mr. Hartman, can you hear me at all?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, we're losing your audio. We're not hearing much. We didn't hear any of your answer there in between. If your internet is not fully stable, one tactic that we found works sometimes is if you turn the camera off and just use the audio. Sometimes that reduces the demand on your bandwidth and might work just a little better. Let's try that.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can now. Yes, sir.
Okay. So why do I want to serve on this committee is, as a teacher, as someone who's taught government and U.S. history, we always are trying to explain to our students, what actually happens, because I feel that there is a disconnect between what actually happens and what people think actually happens. And so the authentic nature of an experience is very powerful for young people and for all people, really. And so the opportunity, when I saw this opportunity arise, I figured it would be, I would be doing myself and my students a disservice if I didn't take advantage of at least attempting to be a part of this process.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. My name is Janet Rios. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And my second question for you is, given the commission's seated members and what you know about their backgrounds and skill sets, could you highlight elements of your personal background, skills, and knowledge of Santa Barbara County that you think will add to the overall diversity of the commission?
Okay. Well, to be perfectly honest, I don't know a whole lot about your own backgrounds and skill sets. But that being said, as a teacher, I'm used to dealing with a large group of people with a
Mr. Hartman, I think we're losing your sound again. We can't hear you.
personal experiences. Again, as
Mr.
a
Hartman,
teacher-
you cut off in the middle of it. I'm so sorry to interrupt. Would you be able to start over?
Sure. Can you hear me? I
Yes.
apologize for my technology. I don't really know you guys yet. So I'm not sure what your skill sets or abilities are. But that being said, my job as a teacher and as a coach is to help facilitate, achievement of a common goal. And so whether that be, in a classroom setting, preparation for a project or a test, or on the football field, we're going to try to find the strengths that each of us possess, and I try to accentuate those things, so that we can achieve the result that's.
Oh, Mr. Hartman, I think we lost you again there. I guess we'll give him a second. Mr. Hartman, not sure if you can hear me.
I can hear
you. You left off on the last thing I heard was a common goal and find everyone's strengths, I think, to achieve a common goal. Oh, you're muted, Commissioner Morris.
Mr. Hartman, if I could suggest, could we maybe have you call in on a phone line? That I think may give us a better result. Do you have the number to do that and the link, or we could have Ms. Tilton? Could you email that to him really quickly?
Yes, I will. It was in the original email. It'll take me a minute to resend that email because it's unique to him, but I will resend it.
And Mr. Hartman, hopefully you're hearing that. We're going to send you the number to call in by phone.
Is it okay? One.
Yeah.
I can also get the number. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Ochoa.
If you're able to view the chat, we've just posted it there as well.
Hello?
There we are.
Can
That's a
everyone
much
hear me?
clearer line.
Yes,
Okay, I apologize for my technology.
We all have days, so no worries at all. So I think we left off in the middle of Commissioner Rios's question.
Yes, I can ask that again if you'd like, or should we just pick up where we left off?
No, I got it.
Okay.
I think that as a teacher and as a coach, it's part of my job, is part of all of our mandate, is to accentuate the strengths that we each have, and to build a team that is optimized to achieve the desired outcome. So in the case of in a classroom, it's to learn a specific objective for the day or the week, or maybe even prepare a presentation or a project. On the football field, it's about obviously winning a football game. And for us, the mandate is to come up with a fair and our best options for redistricting the supervisory redistricting in the county. So
that's my personal background is sort of that. That's what I do. As far as my knowledge of Santa Barbara County, that I think will add to it, add to the diversity. As I said, I've been here, for over 20 years, but I'm not a Santa Barbara County lifer. So in some aspects, I have an outside perspective. I was born and raised on the East Coast. Went to college in the Midwest. So I've seen different parts of, the country and different, aspects of it. So while, diversity can be defined in many different ways, I think I do bring different perspectives possibly than someone who, has lived their entire life inside the county.
Good evening. I'll be asking the third question. This is Cheryl Trotsky. How would you help the commission draw lines that promote communities of interest?
Well, I did look at the PowerPoint that you guys have looked at in previous meetings. And so the first thing is you have to identify, the whole idea of what common interests you're going to use that defines a community of interest, right? So there's that was a quote right from the PowerPoint slide. So once you define what those commonalities are, or what important commonalities that we have, then we go through the process of looking at all the other criteria that are listed to see where that community of interest fit in the supervisoral districts. I think that it's important to identify what those special communities, those communities of interest are, but I also think that it's a part of the bigger process. I don't think you can build 5 supervisoral districts just from the communities of interest. You have all those other criteria that are listed. So it's a major part of it, but it's not the only. I don't know how we would promote that per se, as opposed to understand that we have communities of interest in our county, and we want to make sure that they're viable in the supervisoral districts. But it's just one part of a much larger process.
Good evening, Mr. Hartman. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Doug Bradley, and I'll be giving you your 5th question this evening.
I think I need to ask question number 4.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I jumped the gun there.
Hi, this is Karen Twyvell, and I'll be asking question number 4. Could you describe a project or other experience in which you've had to collaborate with a group of individuals in order to reach a common goal? And when you disagreed with others, how did you handle the disagreement?
Well, so yeah, that's a daily occurrence. So again, as a teacher, there's a hierarchy of what you do. You have, me as a classroom teacher, I have my department chair who's above me, I have the administration who's above me, and I have a school board or superintendent and a school board who are above them. And so there are times when, a decision gets handed down, so to speak, and it may not be the way that I view, potentially the best scenario. And in that case, you say, okay, and you voice your opinion in a respectful manner. And if it's, your opinion is listened to and the decision is not, necessarily agreeing with you, then you move on and you do what you're supposed to do. In a coaching staff, it's much the same way. So over my 20 plus years of coaching football, if, there's been many times when we've disagreed on things, and as long as you go back to your core principles of why are we doing this and what's truly important, then, there's always, more than one way to skin a cat, I guess is the old expression. Just because someone else's opinion is different than yours, it doesn't make it more or less valid. It just makes it different. And so the other part of this is this isn't a one-shot deal. One of the things in the PowerPoint was that this is an iterative process. Okay, we're going to do it, and then we're going to redo it, and then we're going to redo it, and we're going to redo it, and we're going to redo it again and again and again. And that's, so you're not going to hit it, our final product isn't going to be the first one offered. So if, something doesn't work, we work through it and we come up with a solution, and then we revise it and we revise it and revise it. So I think there's going to be plenty of opportunities for everyone's opinions to be heard. One other thing is just, over the years, sometimes the best ideas is when you take a little bit of this person's idea and a little bit of that person's idea, and you somehow kind of bring it together, and you really can come up with something special. So I don't see that being an issue at all. Disagreements, or like I said, doesn't make one person right or wrong. It just makes them have different, perspectives on how to solve the problem.
Okay, good evening again, Mr. Hartman. Sorry I've jumped the gun last time. Your question, your last and fifth question this evening is, how do you think the commission should address the problem of public education and outreach on redistricting to help encourage broad participation in the commission's work? What are some ideas you have for the commission to solicit public input on the redistricting process and methods of public outreach to ensure transparency? Thank you.
Well, this is of the 5 questions, I think this one is the most, exciting or the most interesting, because it has the most action involved in it. As I said earlier, I think that there's a disconnect amongst the general population and what they think actually happens in government, and then what does actually happen in government. And so the key word in this is transparency. Just being totally above board and honest and open with the way that this process is going to happen, I think is crucial. So how do we get people to buy in? How do we educate people on what we're actually doing, and how do we get them to buy in and say, hey, these guys are doing things the right way? So I think you need to have multiple modes or arenas of communication. If that's involving, social media, traditional print and broadcast media, meetings, I think we need to really engage with certain community partnerships and community groups to reach some of those communities of interest that we will, talk about probably at length, and identifying those community partnerships in the different areas of the county to ensure that everyone's voice is heard in this matter, I think is the only way to really get buy-in. And once you have buy-in from various civic organizations and various groups in the county, then they're knowing that we're doing this, 1, for the right reasons, and 2, we don't have some hidden agenda that is part of the that disconnect that I keep mentioning. Once people really truly understand that who we are and what our mandate is, and that we're going about it the right way, that some of those, I don't know if fear is the right word, but distrust or trust issues tend to take care of themselves.
Well, sir, thank you. We appreciate your interest in serving with us on the commission, and appreciate what you do in the community. As I mentioned, we have 2 more interviews that we need to do at the beginning of our meeting a week from this evening. We would invite you to log in for that meeting. We'll make sure you get that invitation. The intent is that following those interviews to select a candidate and hopefully swear in that individual and have them begin participating right away. So we'll make sure that you get that information again. And again, thank you for joining us this evening.
All right, thank you. And again, I apologize for the technical difficulties.
Not a problem. We've all been there more often than we've cared.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. So commissioners, that's the last interview we have for this evening. Again, I would remind you to if you haven't yet already done so, to take a moment between now and next week to review Mr. Elak's previous interview. item 6 on our agenda is a discussion and action regarding future training and future agendas. What I'd like to just mention here, at our in addition to the last 2 interviews next week, one of the major items we're going to take a look at is a draft calendar that takes us through the rest of the calendar year, and begins to try to identify when we will, when we will hold the different outreach sessions, the required 7 and 7 hearings, all of those kinds of things. How we'll weave in our business meetings into those pieces. Ms. Tilton, as soon as that is published to the community on the website as part of the agenda packet, could I ask that you send that to all of the candidates that are applying for this, with a suggestion that they maybe take a hard look and ensure and make sure that they know what they're signing up for. I'd hate to, pick somebody at the top of the hour and 45 minutes later have them go, whoa, time out, right? So, so if we could maybe get that to them a little early, so that if that's a concern for anybody with their, life schedule, that they could maybe notify you before we begin our meeting next week.
Yes, I will send that out. It will be in the packet that'll be available on Friday, and I'll make sure that each applicant gets a separate individual email of that schedule.
Thank you.
Just
Yeah.
for the benefit of the commissioners, when you see that schedule, there's a column that says whether a quorum is required. So not all of these outreach meetings will need to be attended by a full quorum. So don't let that concern you.
All right. Don't overly panic. Yeah. So, Cheryl Ostrowski.
I have a question. I don't know if we can take questions, just a general question at this time.
We can pose it, sure.
I always am happy that we have such great community input, and we get letters and we have comments and they go unanswered. And so I wanted to find out, is it okay for us to reach out to an individual? Is it okay for me to reach out to an individual and explore what they are saying in a short paragraph to find out, the fullness of their concern? Because I think it's going to be relevant, especially when we're drawing lines in the Northern County, that no matter who we elect, that we've clearly vetted all the issues that are up there. Before I was even on the commission, I'd always heard that North County feels they're underrepresented, they're not heard. And so I'd like to understand that a little better, and wondered, what my parameters are here.
Sure. No, it's a very good question. And Ms. Orden, do you want to give a kind of, my understanding is that we should all consider that as part of what we're stewing on, but I don't think we as individuals should formally respond. But Ms. Orden, do you want to enlighten?
There are 2 parts of it, and I'm hopeful that we can maybe even have something in writing for the commission. It's become more complicated just recently because our ordinance is different than the state statute. And under the state statute, that is undoubtedly not something that you would be able to do. But our ordinance makes a point that you are supposed to have outreach. You are allowed to have these individual conversations. You are allowed to go to the Boys and Girls Club and the Kiwanis Club and hear information and give information. And that's what our outreach is about. A one-on-one along those lines is appropriate as under our ordinance as an ex parte communication, but you would then put it into the record of the ex parte communication. Only because there are being questions raised about some of the other government code sections and ordinances, I'd like to have that agendized for the next business meeting so that we can give you the kind of advice that you deserve. But obviously, luckily, the ordinance that we have does make it clear that we are in the business of that kind of outreach. And that what I was said in two parts, there's also the Brown Act portion of it about responding at the time. That is a different issue. Responding at the time is not what is recommended under the Brown Act. So you don't want to start a conversation that becomes an unagendized item with substance in it. But I didn't mean for it to go quite so long, but I wanted you to have a sense of it. And I'm going to give it to you a little more concretely in the next business meeting.
So thank you, Commissioner Trotsky, for bringing it up. That's a good question. We'll add that to our next agenda. Ms. Tilton, Ms. Orden, anything else from either of you tonight?
Nothing at all. And I thought it was a really very, very helpful and good meeting.
I did see a note in the chat about public comment related to these particular candidates. Unless Ms. Orden tells me differently, I would prefer to hold that public comment until we've heard from all of the candidates so that the public can speak to all candidates in making recommendations rather than splitting that across 2 evenings. If that's appropriate, Ms. Orden?
I think that would be perfectly appropriate.
Good. So we will make sure that after the 2 interviews next week, that there's a chance for the public to make recommendations before the commission makes a selection. Mr. Turley.
Yes, so probably should put on the agenda either next session or the meeting afterwards, an update from the outreach marketing team.
Yes, I believe that's on next week as well. I think those are the two. So calendar and some outreach materials. If it's not on the next one, it's definitely on the one too from.
It will be on the next one. And as well as we'll be talking about mapping tools and the budget therefore.
So full schedule again, Mr. Trotsky and then Commissioner Almeida.
I tried to use the website that they mentioned last week and it wanted me to sign in. And so I've reached out to several HOAs, Summerlin, Montecito, Miramar, and they're asking for speakers and that sort of thing. So I wanted to refer them to the website, but I wanted to make sure that
this is the public organization website. Sorry, you muted again. It bounced you.
The Draw Santa Barbara.
Oh, so that I don't think has gone live yet. I think we're gonna review that next week before it goes magic and live.
Yeah, so for now, the existing website works and there is a place to enter those organizational names, those names of the organizations. But yes, I did confirm after our conversation that that it is not live yet. And I believe the rollout will be on May 19th when it's presented to the commission.
Mr. Almeida, did I see a hand raised?
Yes, sir. So just wanted to put something out there possible for consideration, so I've been doing a lot of soul searching, especially how I could best serve the commission, and looking at the applications, a guy like Kevin Ilac, political partnership versus ethnicity, so something out there for consideration, right? I mean, I think important work on the commission, but like I said, I feel like there's a lot of distractions. I don't think you need to be on the commission to really make a difference in the community. When I have no political preference, right? I look at a guy like Kevin Ilac and his application, I looked at his interview again, independent commission. I think, especially being an Asian Pacific Islander voice, with all the misinformation we've seen, I think that's an important voice to have, especially as a commissioner at large. It doesn't solve the 3rd district issue, but that's something else for consideration since we're going forward, and then I also have potentially some unforeseen naval requirements, with my reserve duty. Obviously clean slate when I signed up for this way back when, but think the mission changes, and I'm just thinking ahead, I don't have anything hard yet, but there's some things that may require me to be gone more than planned, potentially earlier. So that's something else in a consideration. So I just wanted to put that out there, for the commission, again, thinking not in my interest, right? What I want to be here for me, but thinking of, hey, what we're going to do for the community, what would be best served in the commission? What voices do we need? Because it's not just a Latino and white issue, right? It's a complex world. I do think it's critically important to have that Asian Pacific Islander voice, especially during these times, and I think that commissioner at large that has a broad overview, right? I think is the right place for it, and I'm very impressed with this candidate. Obviously, independent district, you can make your own decisions, right? But, I am, willing and thinking about, offering that, resignation. So to give my place to, for those options, but to look at that, right? To have broader representation,
Well, we would miss you a lot, but I understand life changes, and it will certainly change maybe the direction of our conversation after we finish the interviews next week. So let's readdress it at that point. Maybe you'll have a little more clarity a week from now than you do today. Maybe not. We'll see. So thank you for at least the heads up.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else on future agenda items? Very good. We will adjourn for this evening. Remind everybody that we're back to the 6 p.m. start time next week, as opposed to the 7 p.m. that we did tonight. Again, as always, we appreciate those from the community that join us and help us to move forward with our agenda. Appreciate our staff and the members of the commission for your commitments as well. We'll see you all a week from tonight.